The message was small and almost invisible, written in shaky blue ink on the last blank page of a forgotten library book, but it carried the weight of a life that had already learned how easily the world looks away, because when the librarian flipped the page that afternoon she felt a chill that had nothing to do with the old building's air conditioning. A chill that came from reading the name Lily Carter followed by a few uneven lines about hunger, cold nights, and the hope that someone somewhere might still care, and if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of ordinary people doing the right thing, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because this story begins with one abandoned girl and ends with a roar that shook an entire city. Lily Carter was 16, though she looked younger because hunger has a way of shrinking people, and for weeks she had been sleeping wherever the shadows were deepest, under highway bridges, behind closed shops, sometimes in the far corner of the public library where warmth and silence briefly pretended to be safety, and she loved books not because they promised escape but because they reminded her that other lives existed where pain had meaning and endings came with justice, and on the morning she left the message she had chosen a thick hardcover about American roads and forgotten towns, a book heavy enough to make her arms ache, because she believed weight meant permanence, and permanence meant someone would notice. Lily's story had begun years earlier in a small apartment with peeling paint and a father named Thomas Carter who once smiled easily and worked construction until an accident crushed his leg and his confidence at the same time, and the pills that followed took more than the pain away, and the nights grew loud and unpredictable, and Lily learned how to read moods faster than pages. Until one winter night the shouting turned into sirens and social workers and the apartment door closing behind her mother who never came back, and Lily drifted through foster homes like a leaf in dirty water, learning how to pack everything important into one backpack, until the day she aged out and the world decided she was officially on her own. The library became her refuge because nobody asked questions there, and on that day the ink trembled as she wrote that she was cold, that she was scared, that she was tired of being invisible, that she did not want money or pity but a chance to be seen, and she signed her name because anonymity felt like another kind of death. The librarian, Margaret Ellis, had worked among books for 30 years and thought she had seen every kind of quiet tragedy, but something about the handwriting and the way the words leaned against each other like they needed support made her stop, and instead of shelving the book she carried it to the staff room, where she read it again, slower this time, and felt a responsibility settle in her chest like a promise she could not ignore. Margaret did not know Lily, but she knew people who knew people, and among those people was her nephew Daniel Ellis, a motorcycle mechanic with oil under his nails and a patch on his jacket that read Hell's Angels, a name that frightened some and fascinated others, and Margaret hesitated because she had spent years carefully separating her quiet world from his louder one. Yet she also knew that beneath the thunder of engines there existed a code about loyalty and protecting the vulnerable that rarely made headlines. Daniel listened in silence as his aunt showed him the page, and something in his eyes changed, because he had grown up watching his own mother struggle after his father died, and he understood what it meant to be young and abandoned, and by the time he left the library his phone was already buzzing with messages sent to brothers who trusted him. What happened next unfolded not in speeches or press releases but in movement, because within hours writers began to gather at a warehouse on the edge of the city, men and women from different chapters, different ages, bound by shared scars and the belief that when one person asks for help, ignoring them is a choice, and they chose otherwise. The number grew quickly, motorcycles lining the street like a river of steel and chrome, engines rumbling low as if holding their breath, 400 strong by sunset, and though some came out of curiosity, most came because the message had traveled fast and true, about a girl who left her name in a book hoping someone would read it. They did not come with anger or threats, but with blankets, backpacks, food, and the quiet determination of people who had been written off themselves and refused to let that be the end of someone else's story. Lily, unaware of the storm she had started, spent that evening curled behind a closed cafe, shivering as the city lights blurred, wondering if she had been foolish to hope, if the words she left would be swallowed by dust like so many other attempts to matter, and when she finally drifted into sleep she dreamed of roads that went somewhere, of engines that sounded like heartbeat drums, of hands that did not push her away. Morning came with the sound of footsteps and a shadow falling across her face, and fear rose before curiosity, but what she saw instead was a woman kneeling at a careful distance, holding out a cup of hot soup, her leather jacket patched and worn but her eyes gentle, and behind her the street was filled with bikes and people and a silence heavy with intention, and Lily's first instinct was to run. Because kindness can be terrifying when you have been trained to expect harm, yet her body betrayed her hunger and she stayed. No speeches were made, no questions asked that demanded answers Lily was not ready to give, because the group understood that trust is built by presence, not pressure, and they formed a protective circle that felt less like a cage and more like shelter, offering food, medical attention, and a plan that did not begin with rules but with options. Over the next hours the city watched in confusion as riders escorted Lily to a clinic, then to a temporary safe house arranged through contacts they had cultivated quietly for years, because despite the reputation, many of them spent their lives fixing what they once broke, and Lily learned names and faces slowly, learned that Daniel Ellis was the man who carried the book in his jacket like a relic, learned that Margaret Ellis cried when she heard Lily was safe, learned that being seen did not have to hurt. The challenges did not disappear overnight, because trauma does not vanish simply because help arrives, and Lily struggled with nightmares, with the urge to run at the first sign of attachment, with the guilt of taking resources she believed others deserved more, and there were days she stared at walls and wondered if this was another temporary kindness that would expire, but the angels kept showing up, quietly, consistently, proving through action that stability could exist without conditions. They helped her enroll in a program that allowed her to finish school, connected her with counseling, and taught her how to ride, not as an escape but as a lesson in balance and control, and Lily discovered that the roar of an engine could be a kind of meditation, a reminder that power could be guided instead of feared. News eventually leaked, because a gathering of 400 motorcycles is hard to hide, and headlines tried to flatten the story into something simple, but the truth resisted simplification, because it was not about heroes or saviors, it was about a message that refused to be ignored and a community that chose compassion over apathy. Months passed, then a year, and Lily grew into herself, her shoulders squaring, her laughter returning in pieces, her love of books transforming into a desire to study social work so she could one day be the person who notices the ink trembling on a page, and on the anniversary of the day she wrote the message she returned to the library with Margaret Ellis, placing a new note inside the same book, this time thanking the unknown reader who proved that names matter. As this story comes close to its end, if what you've heard has touched your heart even a little, please show your support by liking this video, sharing it, and staying subscribed, because every engagement helps stories of hope reach someone who might be standing on the edge of invisibility right now. And just before the ending we ask you to comment below with one word that describes how this story made you feel, because your words may be the encouragement someone else needs to keep going. The truth is that Lily Carter was never just a homeless girl, and the Hells Angels were never just a headline, because in the quiet space between despair and action, 400 people proved that compassion can arrive on loud engines and gentle hands, and a message left in a book can echo louder than anyone expects, reminding us that being seen is the first step toward being saved, and that sometimes the world does listen, even when hope feels as thin as ink on a page.